Ma'am, we are live. You can start for the one. Yeah.
So a very warm namaste and good evening to all the participants of this session. I welcome all of you to my presentation, and I'm going to talk about guidelines for scholarly communication. So there are guidelines, there are best practices, there are acts which are in place to help researchers while they navigate the scholarly communication world. So it's very important for all of us to understand that all higher educational institutions are supposed to generate new knowledge. And while generating new knowledge through their departments and laboratories, they're supposed to follow rigor, standards of the field, honesty. But it has often been seen that at times researchers engage in infractions. That is why there are acts and guidelines for them to follow. So this presentation will cover scholarly communication, role of universities, UGC regulations, GARP, WAM, and regulations specified by all these organizations, WAM and COOP. And at the very outset, I want to acknowledge all the sources, websites from where I have taken the contents, examples, in order to explain the concept and importance of guidelines for scholarly communication. Scholarly communication, as we know, it refers to different ways in which the researchers create, disseminate, and archive their research findings. That can be done through journal articles, book chapters, conference volumes. And authors, there are different stakeholders of scholarly communication, like researchers, authors, supervisors, journals, funding bodies, universities, and so on. Role of higher educational institutions. The universities and other higher educational institutions are supposed to be epicenters of new knowledge. Their departments and laboratories generate new knowledge to address the problems related to health, climate change, sustainability, among others. They undertake research to offer substantial breakthroughs to improve living standards of the people, to better utilize the resources and preserve the planet. Research has become very crucial. There is hardly any domain where universities and the scholars don't have a role to play. If you pick up any instance of governments dealing with contemporary issues, you are sure to find a few academics in the core team. So with so much riding on research, any dilution of its sanctity would bring down the entire edifice of progress and development. Any laxity on the rigorous methodologies or standard procedures may prove very catastrophic for all the stakeholders and community as a whole. And it's important for all researchers to know that our research is always open to evaluation and scrutiny even after we get published. And this is one of the sites where researchers can comment on published research. And since it has often been seen, it has often been observed that though there are rules and regulations and acts in place to ensure that there is honesty, that there is adherence to honesty, there is rigor in the field. Still, researchers engage in misconduct, they engage in infractions. That is why different organizations, different bodies have come up with various ethical principles which need to be followed while one is conducting any research study. Different bodies like NIH, National Science Foundation, Food and Drug Administration, and all the listed on the screen, they have laid down various principles, various guidelines which need to be adhered to by all the stakeholders, by researchers, by authors, by reviewers, by publishers, by journals. And the essence of all the regulations or the essence of all the ethical principles spelled out by these bodies are the essence is honesty, objectivity. That means these organizations in their rules specify these principles of honesty, objectivity, integrity, carefulness, openness, transparency, accountability, intellectual property, confidentiality, responsible publication, responsible mentoring, respect for colleagues, social responsibility, non-discrimination, competence, legality, animal care, human subject protection. Then, as researchers, it's very important for all of us to know about the rules of authorship. What is this authorship about? What does it encompass? Authorship carries significant academic, social, and financial implications. It also entails a commitment to responsibility and accountability for the content published. The following guidelines aim to ensure that individuals, it's important that individuals who have made substantial intellectual contributions to a paper receive due credit as authors, while also ensuring that those credited as authors understand their role in assuming responsibility and being accountable for the published material. That means the message of this slide is that all the individuals or all the researchers whose names are mentioned in the bylines should be accountable for the work which they have submitted, should be accountable for the work they have done, they have published. And this International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, it's important for all of us to know, recommends that authorship be based on the following 4 criteria. These 4 criteria are important. Substantial contributions to the conception or design of the work, and acquisition, analysis, or interpretation of data for the work, drafting the work or reviewing it critically for important intellectual content, and final approval of the version to be published. Agreement to be accountable for all aspects of the work in ensuring the questions related to accuracy or integrity of any part of the work are appropriately investigated and resolved. That means, in a nutshell, the message of this slide is that all the authors mentioned in the byline are responsible for accuracy, integrity of the work or any part of the published work. And what are non-author contributors? Who are non-author contributors? For example, while publishing or while preparing our manuscript, if we have taken some technical help or some administrative help from, or we have taken help of our colleagues for proofreading, then we need not write their names in the byline. But if we want to really acknowledge their feedback, their contribution, we can mention their names, not in the byline, but before the references in the acknowledgement. Then now, as we know that chatbots or chat GPT, they have taken the scholarly world by storm. Everybody is using it. But but the journals and the publishers, they have specified very categorically that if you are making the use of chatbots in your work, you cannot mention them in as co-authors, or you cannot mention them in the byline. But if you have used them in your work, you must mention in the methodology part of your work. In case the format does not have methodology, then it must be included, it must be mentioned in the acknowledgement part before the references. But it's very important to know at this juncture that if we are using spell check or Grammarly, then we need not mention. Then sometimes an author includes another person as co-author without that person's knowledge or agreement. The first author might consider this action as a gesture of gratitude, but it is a serious violation of publishing ethics. All authors listed on a paper must participate in preparation of the manuscript for publication and must agree to accept accountability for the content of the paper, because penalties apply to all authors listed on a manuscript and are applied regardless of status, including students. Then things like gift authorship or ghost authorship is a big no-no. It's not at all permissible. The authorship is important because nowadays journals, they ask the authors to specify their roles, their contributions in the paper. As on the slide, you can see, this is an example from PLOS One, where authors have been asked to specify. They have specified their affiliations as well as their roles. First author role, conceptualization, data curation. Second author role, formal analysis, investigation. Third author, formal analysis, investigation. Fourth author, conceptualization, data curation. So this example shows that if we are working in collaboration, we have to specify, we have to demarcate our roles right from the beginning itself, because this is what the publisher or the journal editors want us to do, that because we are supposed to mention our contributions and our roles in preparation of the manuscript. Further, it's important that all authors agree to the order of authorship and author contributions if appropriate. And as we all are aware that even in API, first author has a different weightage, then second author has different weightage. That is why this order of authorship is very important. Then all authors should review the manuscript, whether a primary submission or resubmission, and must approve the submission. The corresponding author or the primary investigator should examine the raw data used in the manuscript, affirm that it accurately reflects the raw data, and should ensure that the original data are preserved and retrievable for at least 5 to 6 years after the manuscript is published. You see this as on the one of the previous slides, you saw roles, conceptualization. So this is credit author statement. Credit author statement, what is it? Credit is contributors roles taxonomy, was introduced with the intention of recognizing individual author contributions, reducing authorship disputes, and facilitating collaboration. So credit offers authors the opportunity to share an accurate and detailed description of their diverse contributions to the published work. The corresponding author is responsible for ensuring that the descriptions are accurate and agreed by all authors. The roles of all authors should be listed using the relevant above categories. You see, according to credit taxonomy, all these roles have to be clearly defined, like conceptualization, methodology, software use, validation, formal analysis, investigation, resources, data curation, writing original draft, writing, review and editing, visualization, supervision, project administration, and funding acquisition. Then this is another important thing which all researchers should be in the know of. This is ORCID, which stands for Open Researcher and Contributor ID. And how does it help you? Registering for your ORCID, it means that you have a free, unique, persistent identifier that disambiguates researchers and their work. That means it is a 16-digit unique identifier, and it is unique for all the researchers, and it differentiates one researcher from another. Or one can say it is an Aadhaar card of scholarly communication world. So the message over from this slide, or the takeaway from this slide, is that all researchers should have an ORCID ID, because it is unique and it stays with the researchers as long as they are pursuing their career. ORCID helps enable recognition and reduces the reporting burden for researchers. It is important. It also enhances the discovery process and lays the foundation for trust in a digital research environment. Then guidelines for research data. All data sets underlying the findings, conclusions of the paper should be available to readers. Authors should deposit their data sets in publicly available repositories where available and appropriate, or present them in the main manuscript as supplementary files. This is very important because these days publishers, journals, even funding bodies, they specify, they want you to make your data sets available openly in open access, so that others can use them, so that others don't have to reinvent the wheel, so that others don't end up in blind alleys. And it has become mandatory these days. So you should have a plan for preserving, for conserving your data sets right from the initial stage of your research. And it's very important in case you see, you have published your research, and if after your research gets published and another researcher or others want access to your research, and you don't have data sets, you have not preserved them properly, you can't provide them, so it can be retracted even. So this research data sets, their maintenance, their availability in open access is very important. So, and you must have observed that at the end of the journal articles, data availability statement is there. A data availability statement tells the reader where the data associated with the paper is available, and where applicable include links to data sets. And at this juncture, I would also like to specify that there are certain data journals which just publish data sets of your manuscript. So if you make your data sets available in public domain, or you can publish them as papers, then you are likely to get more visibility, more recognition for your work. By data is meant the minimal data set that would be necessary to interpret, replicate, and build upon the findings reported in the article. Data repositories make data more accessible and discoverable than sharing data via supplementary information files. So this is important. Though we provide data as supplementary files, but it is in the fitness of things, or rather it is advisable to submit your or to upload your data in data repositories. And public repositories generally assign a DOI to data sets, which allows them to be cited in references. So there are subject-specific repositories. There are general repositories where data sets can be submitted. Then, as we all know, we undertake research to disseminate the findings. So it's important for us to know that we have to disseminate, we have to communicate our research findings through authentic, through well-established, through core outlets of the field. There are certain predatory journals. They are also known as vanity journals or pseudo journals, and they are a big no-no. We should be aware of them. We should know how to distinguish a legitimate journal from a predatory journal. We should know how to differentiate between the two. These predatory journals accept and publish almost all submissions and charge article processing fees, often informing authors about this after a paper acceptance for publication. This is important. APC is charged in gold publishing. But what do these predatory journals do? They will take your manuscript, and once they claim that it is accepted, they will ask you to pay an amount as article processing fee in order to publish your manuscript. Further, it's important for us to know that these predatory journals often claim to perform peer review, but do not, and may purposefully use names similar to well-established journals. So what is the flaw in these predatory journals? That means they claim to perform peer review, but in fact, actually they don't undertake peer review. Researchers must be aware of such journals and avoid submitting research to them for publication. Authors have a responsibility to evaluate the integrity, history, practices, and reputation of these journals to which they submit their manuscript. For example, this is the screen shows an example of a predatory journal. What happens once you published an article? Then what will happen? You will get unsolicited mails from different predatory journals to publish your manuscript in those journals. So this is an example of International Journal of Latest Research in Humanities and Social Science. As you can see, there is some problem in the title itself. Then what does it say? It says you can submit your manuscript simply by mailing on editor at. But what happens in authentic journals or in legitimate journals? They generally have a submission portal where you're supposed to create an account and upload your manuscripts. But this is asking you to submit to send your mail to send your manuscript to a particular mail ID. And it says last date of submission of paper is 15th September. Date of notification of acceptance within 2 days, which doesn't happen in a journal. On an average, in an authentic, reputed journal, it takes, on an average, it takes from 6 months to 24 months to get published. But it claims to publish within 2 days. Publish your paper within 4 days. It doesn't happen, but it claims to do that. So that is why, that is how we should know, and we should be careful and differentiate between predatory journals and legitimate ones. So as on the screen, you can see this homepage of University Grants Commission UGC care list. So if in the initial stage you're clueless whether if you publish in a particular journal, you will get some weightage or not, then this is the right place to start from. You can create an account and just find out whether the journal which you have selected for communicating your research findings is available in this list or not. It's very important for you to understand that this UGC tier list is very dynamic, because it evaluates the journals on continuous basis, and it delists them too. As you can see on the homepage itself, list of clone journals, UGC tier group 2, then delisted journals from group 2. Then there are certain organizations which have introduced certain principles which you should keep in mind in order to differentiate between a predatory journal and a legitimate journal. That means website should be seen. A journal's website, including the text that it contains, shall demonstrate that care has been taken to ensure high ethical and professional standards. The journal website should not contain any information which may mislead the readers. Aims and scope statement should be clearly spelled. Name of the journal should be unique and not the one which is easily confused with another journal. The journal should clearly spell out their peer review process. Peer review is defined as obtaining advice on individual manuscripts from experts of the field. Then the journals should clearly mention ownership and management aspects as well. Contact information, physical office, contact information of the editors and everyone should be given, plus physical contact office should be given too, because it has often been seen that such information is missing from the websites of predatory journals. And it's important for us to also to know that often predatory journals write the names of well-established experts of the field without seeking their permission or without seeking their consent. Then the journals should mention information about copyright and licensing. Any fee or charges that are required for manuscript processing or publishing material in the journal should be clearly stated in a place that is easy for potential authors to find prior to submitting their manuscripts. And it's important, if no such fees are charged, that should also be clearly stated. Then the guidelines say that publisher and editors shall take reasonable steps to identify and prevent the publication of papers where misconduct has occurred, including plagiarism, citation manipulation, and data falsification, fabrication, among others. That means journals should specify their policy. They should spell out what would they do for containing plagiarism, for containing fabrication, manipulation of images, and other aspects. Then journals should also specify their policies on ethics, journal policies on authorship and contributorship, how the journal will handle complaints and appeals, journal policies on conflict of interest, journal policies on data sharing and reproducibility, journal policies on ethical oversight, on intellectual properties, and options for post-publication discussions and corrections. Then journals should specify about their access model, the ways in which journal and individual articles are available to readers, and whether there are associated subscription or pay-per-view fees. Then journals should also mention about their archiving policies. So this is an example to show you that all these principles of transparencies, how to figure them out in a particular journal. For example, this is a journal, Indian Journal of Medical Research. Then it talks about the journal. It provides all information. It talks about criteria for consideration of papers. It also mentions scope of the journal. Then you can see on the website itself, it mentions abstracting and indexing information. It's very important for you to understand this information. You see, most of the predatory journals, they claim to have a very high impact factor. Then you must know that it is only the journals which are listed in Web of Science, which are indexed in Web of Science, they have impact factor. And more important for all of us to understand is that Clarivate Analytics is the only body in which provides impact factor to the journals. Then journals, all the journals are supposed to spell out their policy with regard to ethics. Spell out their stand on open access publication and talk about the licensing pattern as well. So you can see all these parameters which you can use for differentiating between predatory and legitimate journal. Scope is very important. The journal publishes original communication of biomedical research that advances or illuminates medical science, or that educates the journal readers. It defines the scope. Manuscripts dealing with clinical aspects will be considered for publication. And then it also talks about that it strongly discourages duplication, reduplication of data already published in other journals. Even when certain cosmetic changes, additions are made. The next guideline or rule which you should be aware of as researchers, that this is a UGC portal where students or young researchers can create an account and update their profile. Another important rule is promotion of academic integrity and prevention of plagiarism in higher educational institutions, regulations 2018. And what are the objectives of these regulations? To create awareness about responsible code of conduct, to educate and train students to follow proper code of conduct, and to develop systems to detect plagiarism and to set up mechanisms to prevent plagiarism and punish those who commit acts of plagiarism. These regulations, UGC regulations 2018, they also spell out about the duties of higher educational institutions for curbing plagiarism. These regulations talk of the similarity checks for all plagiarism shall exclude the following: all quoted works reproduced with all necessary permission or attribution, all generic terms, laws, standards, symbols, and standard equation. That means these regulations 2018, they also talk of common knowledge, which should not be considered as plagiarism. And while this, while these anti-plagiarism software are being used, the common knowledge should be excluded. There should be a departmental academic integrity panel, an institutional academic integrity panel. Then these regulations also, in fact, these regulations have specified similarity into different levels, and they have also spelled out penalties for different levels. And penalty in case where the degree has already been obtained. Level 0 is similarities up to 10%, and this is acceptable. Then level 1 is similarity above 10%. Level 2 is similarity above 40 to 60%, and level 3 similarities above 60%. Then the UGC has come out with a public notice on self-plagiarism. And it has defined self-plagiarism includes republishing the same paper, publishing smaller work from a longer and previous published work, reusing data already used, breaking up a longer study into smaller ones, paraphrasing one's own previously published work. So these things are not permissible, and we should be well aware of all these rules and regulations. Then this public notice also specifies self-citations do not add any number to the individual citation index or H index. Then, as we know, as per UGC regulations 2018, all universities are supposed to scan the thesis of students before they submit them for evaluation and award of degree. So most of the universities were using ORCID, and now InfluMnet is extending the facility of new software. Most of the universities are also using Turnitin. But one thing is common. Characteristics of these software, in fact, these, whether you use Turnitin or Utpund or Drillbit or any other one, the essence of all these are that they are automated computer programs, and they are simply tools and aids which highlight similarity of your content with the already published content. They do not decide plagiarism. Nowhere on the site of any software it is mentioned that this is the plagiarism, that plagiarism has occurred. It simply highlights that there is similarity in the content. And it is up to the human mind, it is the human scrutiny which has to decide whether plagiarism has occurred or not. So what are the advantages of using these anti-plagiarism services? Quality of assignments or draft is enhanced. Teachers can give their feedback. Students can learn from one another through peer review. And of course, citation and referencing skills are enhanced. And it has research has shown that when students know that their work would be scanned through anti-plagiarism software, they are a bit cautious. So these anti-plagiarism software acts as a deterrent. But while using them, one has to exercise prudence and know that it cannot replace human intelligence. Instructor has to take the final call. They are merely aids in order to give effective feedback to the students. Tools which teach the students about the best practices of scholarly writing and communication. Then there is another guidance document which was brought out by UGC in September 2020. It is a 56-page document, and I would say it is a must read for all researchers and supervisors and faculty. It spells out what should be the rules, what should be the norms, what should be followed, what should be adhered to in each and every stage of research. Norms, rules, and procedures to be followed in each and every stage of research, whether it is design, formulation of hypothesis, or actual conduct, or data analysis, or dissemination of findings. Misconduct should be checked. It underlines this document underlines that proper documentation, data management plan is very important. And it also specifies that choosing the right outlet for communicating your research findings is also important. Then UGC also has published in 2021 regarding academic integrity and research quality. It's a book on academic integrity and research quality, and it has 16 well-researched articles covering the basic parameters of ethics, publishing codes, and publishing of research across diverse subject areas. Then Committee on Publication Ethics is committed to educating and supporting editors, publishers, and those involved in publication ethics. It advocates that ethical practices should become a normal part of the publishing culture. It has laid down, it has spelled what should be done in different cases, like in allegations of misconduct, what should be the criteria for authorship and contributorship and other aspects of publishing. Then WAM, that means World Association of Medical Editors. It has also spelled out different rules, different principles which must be followed by medical editors, by editors of medical journals, but they are equally applicable to editors of other fields. They have developed policies and recommendations of best practices for medical journal editors and given a syllabus for editors that members are encouraged to follow. Then, as we all are aware, that university has introduced a 2-credit course, Research and Publication Ethics. It has been made compulsory for all PhD students. Then it's very important for all of us to know that while we are undertaking research, then we have to get proper approvals. All universities have a ethics review board. Initially or earlier, we can say we used to, the seeking approval, seeking due approval, seeking consent was important in medical science research. But now it's very important for all of us to know, to understand that seeking proper approval before we begin our research has become mandatory across all the fields, be it social sciences, life sciences, humanities, or any. And it has also been observed that even after one gets published and then it comes to the fore that proper consent or proper approvals were not sought, even in such cases, after the article gets published, it is retracted. And so, as I said, finding the right journal for disseminating your research is very important. There are various software and various websites which help you in identifying the right journal for your work. Different journal recommenders are there. Further, you may scan the references of the articles which you have consulted. This is very important. You may scan the references of the articles which you have consulted. So takeaways, in order to summarize, I'll say takeaways from this presentation. Research is always open to evaluation and scrutiny. I have highlighted various UGC regulations. Then guard document, scope, and principles of transparencies by WAM. And then the importance of automated programs or text detecting software, anti-plagiarism software, which we call and use. So with this, I end my presentation and I invite your queries or observations or comments. Over to you, Dr. Shukla.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for delivering a wonderful talk. So participants, you are requested to type your question in YouTube chat. If you have any query, I will ask to the ma'am. You may type your question in the YouTube chat box. Ma'am, there is one question from Rachita Agrawal. Can you please elaborate on H index?
H index, okay.
Yeah.
H index, let me tell you, there are various databases which provide you. For example, Web of Science, it provides you, it gives you, Scopus gives you, and Google Scholar gives you. For example, if I say I have an H index of 18, that means I have published, say, 50 papers, and out of those 50 papers, 18 papers of mine, each is very important. Each has more than 18 citations. So if I say you have an H index of say 23, so that means you have published n number of papers, and out of those 23, each has 23 citations at least. So again, you just have to understand this concept. You don't have to, you won't be required to calculate, because there are databases, because these are in fact data software driven figures, and software does it for you. You just have to know the concept. What does it mean? And it's very important again for you to know that these H index, it may differ. For example, it depends upon the citation practices of the field, and citation practices of the field vary from subject area to subject area. You know, we have more citation practices in chemistry than in life sciences than what we have in library science.
Any other question? Participants, you may write in the chat, YouTube chat box. No, ma'am, there is no another question. Participants are saying yes, excellent lecture. So thank you so much from the Ramanujan College, and for delivering a wonderful talk for the participants. Thank you once again.
Thank you.